Okay, I'm live, and also I'm hoping that the microphone situation is gonna be better this time around because I had a bunch of people say they could not hear me. So, if you hear me fine, if this sounds better, let me know because I adjusted everything. Um, so some of you that may have watched this yesterday, I got started on this. This is a 1933 General Electric model K-50-P. And yesterday I got it to kind of work. But I made probably one of the most irresponsibly stupid decisions ever, which is I wasn't totally paying attention to what was going on with the parts that I was pulling out of my parts bin and just assumed that the two capacitors I pulled out were the correct ones. And I plugged it in yesterday and it absolutely uh, blew up. Because what I'd done is I'd, for some reason, put 1,500 35 volt, 1,500 microfarad 35 volt capacitors in here when it's expecting more like 250. So, long story short, after that episode, I went in and I figured out what I'd done wrong here. There was also a couple of just bad connections here. So it works pretty well now. The other thing that I'm going to do today is add the ability to listen to music in addition to the radio. And I'm doing that through one of these Bluetooth devices that's already connected. And what I did is this set does not have a regular volume control that you would see on more modern radios. Instead, I think it's adjusting I can't remember, I think it's adjusting the screen voltage coming off of the output too, but I could be completely wrong about that. I probably am. So you can't use the volume control for your audio in like I show a lot on these. You have to go in through the grid of the output tube, which in this case is 2A5, which is up here. And I took out my tube manual and found the grid pin. And I've run this alligator clip and I've got it connected to this isolation transformer. But I need to boost the signal a little bit. So this transformer is 110 volts in and 6 volts out. And it's going to boost my signal just a little bit, my audio signal. And the volume is controlled via the phone. And let's see what comes on. It's not super loud. That's about all you get out of these things. I just realized something too, which is the transformer is cutting my radio signal. So let's try this again. Yeah, it does not. There we go.
Press got all excited, promoted, saying that they're researchers, even though the company that's selling to them knows. He expects GLP-1s to be. Yes.
The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration says the contiguous United States set a record for its hottest month ever in July. Last month averaged 76.89 degrees Fahrenheit across the lower 48 states, eclipsing the July of 1936's.
No kidding. It's been hot here. Anyway, I went to visit my parents Went to visit my parents in Tennessee, and it was honestly about the hottest. It was just hot there. Let's just put it that way. I'm not used to that anymore. Like, kind of been a weenie out here in California for a long time, where the weather's arguably pretty ideal. Doesn't get too hot, doesn't get too cold. Well, depending on where you are. If you go out to the Central Valley, you will fry. It is hotter than the surface of the sun out there. And my wife reminded me of that. She was out in past Sacramento, and the thermometer in her car showed 110 degrees. And I remember going to the California State Fair, which is in Sacramento, one year, and it was brutal. Just brutally hot. Now, where did my pair of pliers go? Don't know where my favorite pair of pliers went, but that's okay. I'll use my secondary pair of pliers. Now, what I'm doing is I'm making, back the camera up a little bit, I'm making my setup for my isolation transformer input. And because we have a right and left channel, we want to pair those right and left channels together through a pair of resistors. These are values not hypercritical. These are 27 ohm resistors. It just happens to be what I found. Let's see, do we have a hole this could go through? Yeah, I'm just going to have it go through this. Damn it, the camera just came off. Sorry. Disaster. All right. So that goes through there. There's a right and left channel of these resistors. I woke up this morning not feeling too hot, and I don't feel very good right now either. So if I don't sound as chipper and everything, I don't feel very good. It's my right and left channels going to one side of the isolation transformer. I'm putting the input on the secondary side. This is what secondary is your input. Primary goes to radio. And on an output, well, that just came loose. How lovely. And on a lost my train of thought here. Anyway, I've been back here after visiting my parents in Tennessee for a little bit less than a week, and our museum got a whole bunch of mid-century stereo systems, and I'll start working on those probably sometime this week. Those are almost impossible to film with this camera, so I'm going to probably make an episode And I haven't made a full-blown episode in probably over 6 months because I just hadn't felt like it. Where am I'm losing my tools. So this transformer, the reason I chose a 6-volt versus a 12-volt secondary is because I need to boost the signal coming into this set. These early into mid-30 sets, they need just a little bit more oomph. Okay, I've got that all wired up. And just because this thing's going to sit in there rattling or sit in there for who knows how long, I want to make sure if it comes loose that nothing on top here is going to touch anything electronic and be a problem. So I'm going to mask this off. Somehow a piece of my wife's hair is out here. All right. I'm going to fill this up with glue, and when that solidifies, I have a nice good barrier between the electrons that are in the radio and the electrons that are going through this transformer. Now, while I'm waiting for that to dry or cool, I need to create a scenario where I have a switch between the incoming and one thing I'm wondering about. Let me do a little test here. And the test is, it'd be a lot easier if I could just adjust, like run a switch to ground. So that's positive going to the grid of the output tube. I've still got the Bluetooth on. I'm going to see if that does anything. And I just fell down, which I did not want that to do. Stay there. I think it needs just a little more glue, maybe. There we are. Get that all covered. Okay, let's try it and see what it does with that, if anything.
Parenting. She says co-piloting parents is a byproduct of television.
Okay, that works. So here's the ground of my isolation transformer.
From the Stanford Federal Question.
And the world's alright with me.
NBC National Retail Federation monthly monitor shows retail sales growing for the.
Well, that's easy enough. Let me expedite this cooling with my little fan here. All right, that's well on its way to being cooled. So now I'm going to run a switch wire from ground to this, which should be relatively easy. I don't need this much lead here. Okay, that can stay here. That can go through here. This does not need to be that long. So we're getting there. This can go. Totally forgot to tie a knot in this thing, but that's okay. That's not going to be a problem. This needs to be cooled off just a little bit more. First, let me get my super glue. That's what I'm going to use to attach this transformer to the chassis, but it's still too hot. Need to cool it off a little bit more. Good enough, probably. Do you have to do it this way? No, I just do it because it's neater looking. Okay, just hold that there for a minute until it sets. And we're good to go. So now we have positive and negative hooked up. So let me run a switch wire here. What I'll do is I'll put a little micro switch on the end of this. And that way I can turn the radio signal off and on. I'll get this other guy to chassis ground. Neighbors are putting on a new roof, so if you hear all that racket out there, that's what that is. Now that should solve my problem. Now what I need to do is put a switch on that. I buy these little switches, I buy the bag full. They're not very good either, and they melt very easily. So when you solder stuff to these little Chinese things, just make sure that you don't hang around too long or you'll melt them. Put the cap on my glue. Ah, crap. Okay, the system is now installed, so I should be able to turn that little switch off and on to get the radio signal to either play or not play. So let's try it out. So I've still got everything plugged up. I still have music playing through. Let me just see if I can find something more period appropriate versus Hall & Oates. 1930s music.
On mobile devices during school hours. PCBS's Matt Bigler with more on the.
Just like
phones won't be part of the school culture.
It works. Radio, audio. Yes.
July 4th, 2024. The DPA officers mistakenly believe.
fortunate, but just to hear him talk about his career and also the guy that introduced him to the Hall of Fame, Jamie Williams, his tight end, his child.
Seems like we're firing on all cylinders now. Now, yesterday I did work on the cabinet quite a bit because the cabinet was actually in pretty good shape, to tell you the truth, for being almost, I don't know, however old it is. It's 90-something years old. I kind of have to constantly remind myself that these things have been on the planet for a really long time. You have a radio that's been on this planet for almost a century. That's pretty amazing. And I think about whether or not you could ever imagine any of the crap that we use today surviving that long. It wouldn't. For starters, today's modern electronics, and we're starting to see this with 80s electronics, is that the boards get ruined because the electrolytics like to pop open and leak their stuff all over the boards, and it just ruins the boards. All those little Mac classics that I got to use when I was in college, ruined. So let me flip this over. Oof, that's a heavy little radio. And what I'm going to do is get the cabinet back over here. Let me back this camera up so you can see the bigger picture. Ideally, not me. I'm sure that none of you guys need to see my ugly mug. All right, the cabinet's right behind me. Let me go get that. Here's the cabinet, and see it's beautiful, in beautiful condition. Usually something this better. Damn it, the fucking camera fell down again. I think one thing is clear. I need to get a better camera mount because this one's really difficult to work with. Okay, let me put the radio back in the case. Let me just get this dust out of here. The bigger question is, where can I put this? I think I know where. I don't want people to see it that easily, but I'm going to make a little bracket under here. Probably won't film it because it'll take a while for me to do that, but you'll get the idea. I guess this only had 3 bolts holding it in, but that's fine. Never goes easy when you're on live video. Let's see, how can I get these in here? Oh, why? That one's going in. Why is this other one? This model is designed for and tested with RCA radiotrons. Now I know that RCA and General Electric had a really long ongoing feud, even back in the day. And spoiler alert, General Electric won eventually in 1987 when they bought RCA, and Jack Welch proceeded to destroy that company by breaking it up into little pieces. And I kind of feel bitter about that because it was a great company in my opinion, and they made a lot of cool stuff. Now their CEO made some idiotic decisions. First of all, choosing his son to run the business. Secondly, they started getting into all kinds of stupid stuff like carpet and banquet dinners and microwave dinners or whatever. A little too tight. There we go. Tone. Tuning. Never could figure out what this is supposed to do. It's just a momentary knob, so I'm not sure if it's a muting knob or what. Okay. Whatever that is done. Now let's try it out for real now. See. All right, here we go. Let's try it out. Fire it up. Okay, it's on. Let's try Guy Lombardo. How about that? Well, it's not a screamer, but it works. Dun, dun, da, da.
Along San Francisco Bay, San Pablo Bay.
It's work even better. They also. So these things. That's information that.
We all know has been,
I wonder if that's a distant or a. This thing does not have shortwave. There's no way. All right, well, save for making a little bracket for that switch that I'm going to hide back there. Pretty much done. And to pay homage to the former owner, was a fine elderly gentleman. I'm going to put his tag back on here. Because one thing, he has much neater handwriting than I ever did. I used to have beautiful handwriting. So much so that my teacher in 4th grade took me to the principal's office to show how beautiful my handwriting was. And I've been working on computers for a living for the last 27 years. My handwriting looks like chicken scratch now. Okay. I'll be back in just a second. I've got a record player that I need to work on, and I'm going to show you guys what I do for that kind of stuff. What I have here is a record player that came out of a stereo system that a guy who has had me service a few of his record players dropped by, and he said he's having a problem with it making a kind of a chattering noise, and I think I know why. The good news, I think the changer mechanism works perfectly fine. So I can put this record like this and put it on cycle. Okay, automatic 33. Try that again. Okay, the changer mech seems to be in not bad condition. It's cycling very easily. It's what underneath is probably the problem. So let me lift this up. The rubber's in very good shape. This is the idler pulley, and it goes right up against this motor spindle here. And when you start getting into these record players that are 50, 60, 70 years old, the rubber parts will disintegrate. Now, let me take a look underneath. Everything else seems to be hunky-dory. We've got pretty good rubber mounts for the motor. Sometimes those shrink. And this all seems to be moving quite easily. It looks like it's been re-greased. But just because it doesn't hurt and I've got it in my possession, it's not a bad idea to maybe touch it up a little bit. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. Let's touch everything up here that has anything that could possibly move. Not much. That will probably cause the mechanism to turn a little bit more easily. What I want to do is pull this friction pulley off, or idler pulley off. And what I'm doing is kind of eyeing the surface here, because what you don't want to do is this to get slick. So it just needs to be roughened up a little bit. I usually just use a little bit of sandpaper, and I go at it kind of at an angle, not straight across. And what I'm doing is I'm just kind of adding a rough surface to the idler pulley, so it's going to bite into that motor spindle. Now what I also want to do is figure out if there's a way I could easily power this up, because the customer did not bring the thingamabob for it, but I've got one here. Let's see, it looks like red and black going to the motor to power it up. Red and black. Let's see, red and black. So it's the two pins on the end here. But I don't have the right connector, so I'm going to have to do it a more dangerous way. This is why you should not do anything that you see on this channel, because it's potentially dangerous. And you might get shocked doing dumb shit like I do. So don't do it. That's what I'm trying to say. Where is my cheater cable? Oh, here it is. One time I did this wrong and I wound up flipping the breakers in my house. So let's see if it's going to do that this time. Nope, there she goes. All right, that is the right way. That motor is spinning very nicely. I'm just going to roughen it up a little bit. Good. Now I can put the idler pulley back on there. I've lost so many of these stupid C-clips on these record players. They're very easy. There we go. Now, let me get a platter. and try it out, see if it decides to behave. Okay, we're on manual. Let's try automatic mode. That's gripping really hard. See if it'll auto cycle off. It's going to go over. There's no record to detect. Should come off and, yeah, there we go. Turn itself off. Let me try it with 2 records. See if it'll actually drop one after the other. I'm going to start with a shitty record. I don't want the needle to get run. I don't have a good record. Okay, so here we go. First record on auto should just drop 1. It does. Excuse me. Okay, that's playing. Should come over to drop the second one. And it does. Let's see if it gets to the end of the record. It should auto cycle off. It does. It comes over. See if there's another record. There is not. Comes down, shuts off. Let me try just on manual mode. Well, can't do manual mode. Can't do manual mode, but I just overshot the switch. Seems to work, and it's pretty quiet. So I think it seriously was just that the rubber on that idler was just a little bit too slick, and also oiling the stuff doesn't hurt, and also roughening up that spindle. That motor spindle helps too.
Hello.
Hey there.
Hello.
Yeah, you can leave it right there if you want. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
You have a Telefunken with low volume and Bluetooth. Can you tell me a little bit more about your what you have there? Is it a 1950s Telefunken? Because here's the thing, you should be getting pretty loud audio out of that. I mean, that's a pretty quote-unquote modern-ish radio versus the 1930s thing that I saw. Now, something you need to think about is on those radios, a lot of them have tape player inputs. And if not, they'll have a combined record player and tape player, or they'll just have a record player input. And so you need to make sure that if you go in through the tape that you're not going in through the record side. It needs to go in through the play side. And on the record player, depending on how old it is, it could be expecting a crystal pickup. And if it's a crystal pickup, then the crystal pickup on older models would put out somewhere between like 1 and 2 volts, which is considerably higher than what a more modern magnetic or ceramic cartridge is going to do. That's only going to be a fraction of a volt. And so if that's really the case, and that would probably be more for like radios in the early 50s, because by the mid 50s, a lot of people had switched over to ceramic or magnetic. You might have to put a transformer in there to give you a little more gain. I've actually had to do that on. I take that back. Now that you've asked me, yes, I've had to do that on a Telefunken. We had a Telefunken Opus that came in. It was a stereo unit. And on radio, it sounded absolutely phenomenal because it was a giant radio with a lot of gigantic speakers in it. And I ultimately, what I did is, it was stereo. I put 2 6-volt transformers on it, meaning, 1 10 in and 6 volts out. And that made it sing like a nightingale. It was great. And I remember we put that in the museum store, and it lasted less than a week, and it was gone. Someone bought it because it sounded really good. So yes, you can do that. That's a very drawn out, long answer. If you could tell me what Telefunken you have, I could confirm that. So thanks for asking. So this seems like it is pretty dang happy. Cycle off time one more time. This thing's going to go back to somewhere in San Francisco. It's a pain in the butt to drive over there. A lot of people go to San Francisco for vacation. I only go like once or twice a year because, for one thing, it's a crowded city, and number two, it's on a hill, a really, 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 really steep hill. And why people decided to build on top of a giant hill is beyond me. There's areas where it feels like your car could flip end to end down the street. There's people that park on there, and you're like, good God, I hope your parking brake doesn't fail. So this one is done too. And what else? Oh yeah, there's one more thing I wanted to show you guys. Now, some of you who watch this channel might have seen that I had a General Electric, what I would call a General Electric mess of a radio, an atomic age looking radio. Well, I wound up restoring the rest of it and not filming it. And it turned out great. So if you can wait just a second, I'll go grab it and you can take a look. I'm going to put this back in the box. Here she is. So I'd wanted one of these radios for a long time because, I don't know, I've been working as a graphic designer for decades, and this dial is just too much. Look at that. Pure 1950s atomic age, atomic symbol radio. And when I got it, this knob was broken, and the chassis was rattling around inside the case because this whole front end has a bunch of mounts for the chassis, and those had all broken. And so I had to fabricate little standoffs to get this to do its thing. So now it's in my collection. I've always wanted one of these, and I'm too much of a cheapskate. I got this for $20. And usually they're about 150. Now the next thing that's going to come upon the workbench is a pair of Zenith clock radios. This is generically what we in the U.S. collecting community call a Zenith Big Owl Eye radio. You see the big eyes and little nose and stuff. They've made a whole series of cute little radios. Now this one doesn't work. And I think someone's been in it, and it could have been even be me, because this looks all weird. But I've got two of them. This one and I've got a white one. So it's a pair. And what I was going to do, probably not in this episode, was compare the two and figure out why one doesn't work. Probably because I was probably in it years ago and did something wrong. I don't know if this one works. In fact, I know it doesn't work because it's missing a tube. What could that tube possibly be? K-50-C5, and this tube why is that so incinerated looking? Let me see if I can find 50C5. 50C5. I have one right here. Those pins are whacked. Get another one here. Cord is in really good shape on this, so I think someone must have replaced it. Man, this one's a nice shape too. Usually these knobs are missing because they have a tiny little shaft and they're very easy to break. Okay, one thing, the clock is stuck. It's not moving. Let's turn it to radio. Okay, it's definitely glowing away. I can free up that rotor for the clock, that's not a problem. Bad filter caps, but look at that, the clock has freed itself up. Now, one thing I would highly recommend you not do when it comes to clock radios like this, these hands are coated with a glow-in-the-dark paint. This is probably radium, or it could be tritium, and it's sealed behind this glass here. And you can take the rotors off of the back of the movement without touching this. You can just leave it alone, because what you don't want to do, you do not want to open this up, because if there's any paint that's flaked off of there and everything, you don't want to inhale it. And honestly, if you do not feel comfortable working on something like this, you probably shouldn't do it. It's up to you. There's risks involved with all of this stuff. And, you know, you just got to use some common sense about it. Don't breathe in, you know, don't crack this open and scrape the paint off of it. Or if you run into, sometimes these radios have asbestos in them. Again, you just do not want to get the stuff airborne. It needs to stay, you know, solid and intact. And if you can encapsulate it or whatever, then, you know, go for it. This one appears to be in a little bit better shape as far as the clock goes than the black one, because this one looks like the paint's deteriorated quite a bit. You can see how this is almost black now, because what happens is that the radiation literally eats the paint from the inside out. And don't be fooled, this radio may be 75 years old, but that radium is still putting out. But that's for another time, because I'm looking at the clock now and it says 58 minutes and 40 seconds. And I usually somehow run these up to about an hour and then call it quits. But again, I'm not feeling that well today. I'm kind of sick. But thank you all for watching. And I'm glad that something happened that made sense this time versus what usually happens, which is I mess up. So yeah, the radium does not glow. It's like it's eaten all the paint. Well, it's eaten the surface of the paint. And I know that probably everyone that watches this channel has heard this a million times, but maybe not everyone. If you've never heard of the Radium Girls, there was a factory in Orange, New Jersey back in the 20s that was painting watch dials. And the women that worked there were using little brushes, and they were told to use their tongues to tip the tips of the brushes when they were applying the radium. So they were literally ingesting radium paint daily. And these, you know, it's not great to consume radium. And after a few years of doing it, some of these women started having their teeth fall out. And there was another horrible story of a famous tennis player, and I think he fell off a horse and he broke his collarbone, and he started drinking this stuff called Radiothor, which was a radium infused water, like a radium drink. And the guy was loaded because he was a really famous tennis star. And I think this stuff cost like $1 a bottle, which in 1920s US dollars, it's considerable. Practically a day's wages for some people. So most people could only afford to drink one of them, which is probably a blessing in disguise, because this guy, after he healed up, he swore that it was because of the radium water that he was drinking. And so he kept on buying cases of the stuff. Probably drank gallons of radium infused water, and then his jaw fell off, his holes started forming in his skull. It was pretty awful. And I think he was buried in a lead casket because he was so radioactive. So some of the horrible things that came about from technological wonders back in the day. And we think that we're all impervious to that kind of thing now. Well, the big naughty thing that's coming about, in my opinion, is AI. And AI is probably eventually going to take my job, honestly. As well as probably most of the other creative people who do this kind of work for a living, because why not? You can get AI to make a beautiful poster for you just by snapping your fingers instead of having people like me design it. But whatever. Anyhow, I rambled on long enough. You all have a great morning, afternoon, evening where you happen to be. And I will talk to you guys the next time that I do a video, which is, who knows. Now, like I said, I'm going to try to do a real video where it's edited. I've had a lot of people complain that these are not fun to watch. I get it. But there's a whole shit ton of stereo consoles coming in. And so I'm going to film those with my phone and edit it together, and then it'll be probably easier on the eyes to watch. So thank you all so much. Have a great evening, early, whatever. Blech.